Yeah, if you really think about it, the concept of a finishing move really doesn't make much sense, does it? Would you really want your best offensive weapon to be easily recognizable and therefore easier to prepare for? That, of course, is ignoring the absurdity involved in naming a pre-existing move after yourself because wrestlers are all a bunch of self-obsessed hosers. No, that's not a reverse DDT. This is the Wizard of Oz. But if you can get past the bizarre concept of a finishing maneuver, you can really start to appreciate how awesome a great finisher can be. The super kick or RKO hitting out of nowhere, the finality of a tombstone or one-winged angel, the best finishers can add so much to a match. But that's not what we're talking about here. While nearly everyone on this list would eventually end up with one of those excellent finishers, there have been a fair few duds as well. Maybe they changed finishers when moving to a new brand, maybe to differentiate themselves in a new promotion, or maybe they were just plain crap. I'm Tempest, hailing from partsFUNknown, and these are 10 finishers you forgot famous wrestlers had. Hey, I just remembered another finisher that I forgot you had. It's called the Super Subscribe. All you need to do is click on the subscribe bell and you've hit your finisher. Congratulations, you've won the match. Number 10, Hulk Hogan, the Axe Bomber. Hulk Hogan is known for having one of the worst finishers of all time, the Atomic Leg Drop, which is about as atomic as the bomb Sideshow Bob used to try and blow up Springfield. But that was not the only finishing move he had in his career. While not being seen by many Western fans at the time, Hogan spent a great deal of time working for New Japan Pro Wrestling in the 80s and 90s, where he decided to forego his trademark leg drop. Instead, he used a similarly underwhelming lariat, which he called the Axe Bomber. To his credit, this was another generation, and a clothesline was a much more believable finish than it would be today from anybody not named Walter. And yes, I did say Walter. Number 9, Kane, the Iron Claw. It's Kane! Oh man, here we are once again talking about the Embrace the Hate era of Kane. One of the worst eras for the devil's favorite dentist if you forget about Corporate Kane, and Katie Vick Kane, and Testicle Shocking Kane, and Lita Impregnating Kane. Wait, that last one sounds like Lita's the one impregnating Kane, which, I mean, I would watch the 30-second preview of that video. Back on track, in 2011, a notoriously bonkers year for the Big Dub, Kane returned with a welder's mask and decided he needed a new finish, resorting to grabbing his opponent's face and goozling them as hard as possible. The Iron Claw is one of those finishers used by many a wrestler in the 50s, 60s, and 70s who would crush their opponent's skulls with their mighty hands, but maybe it was just this stupid feud with John Cena not catching on, but Kane soon dropped the Iron Claw from his repertoire, returning to using the chokeslam as his primary finish by the end of the feud. Number 8, Seth Rollins, the Collapsing DDT. Poor Seth Rollins has had rotten luck with finishers over the years. WWE decided the curb stomp was too easy for children to replicate, and there you have Seth sitting outside watching all the other kids get to use their finishers while he couldn't have one. He tried the pedigree for a long time, a move that always looked more awkward than devastating when Seth did it. He tried the ripcord knee, which could also be an entry on this list before making that just a signature move. He occasionally uses God's Last Gift and the Phoenix Splash, which are both awesome finishers, but they've never found their way into Rollins' regular rotation. But the creme de la creme of forgotten Seth Rollins finishers has to be the Collapsing DDT. He only used this a few times, but what a strange choice. He hooks you for a DDT, and then rather falling backwards like a normal DDT, he fell forwards. And it does just sort of look like he falls down, doesn't it? The crowd never reacted to this move like it was a finisher, and well, I guess it really wasn't after all. Number 7, Triple H, the Cutter. It's the HKO out of nowhere! Michael Cole screams into a microphone for about 30 years straight in an alternate timeline. Yes, when Triple H made his WWE debut in 1995 as Hunter Hearst Helmsley, he ended his matches with a crisp, clean cutter. This would not be the finisher that Triple H would come to be known for, but that would be because of another user of the classic cookie cutter, Diamond Dallas Page. DDP and Triple H had been pals during their time in WCW. When Triple H started using Page's Diamond Cutter on WWE TV, he called him and politely asked him not to use the finish he'd been using as he was just starting to get over. Triple H acquiesced to his request and stopped using the cutter, instead introducing something called the pedigree to his arsenal instead, and there you go, everyone wins. The power of polite pro wrestlers. Number 6, The Rock, Running Shoulder Breaker. I mean, everyone needs a finish for their debut, right? WWE didn't get a lot right with The Rock's debut at Survivor Series 1996. His hair, those tassels, and this finisher. Long before Dwayne Rockville would light the wrestling world on fire with a classic spinebuster, people's elbow, rock bottom finishing sequence, he was winning his debut with a running shoulder breaker. Ooh, devastating. I mean, it does look like getting dropped on The Rock's massive tree trunk knee would probably not be a pleasant experience, but the running shoulder breaker sure doesn't have the same pizzazz that The Rock would have later in his career. I mean, The Rock himself didn't have that same pizzazz yet either, so, you know, baby steps. Or pebble steps, I suppose. Number 5, Roman Reigns, checkmate. Roman Reigns has largely been presented the same way since his WWE debut alongside The Shield in 2012. At least that was true until he developed a god complex, but that happens to all the greats eventually. His finishers have rarely changed in the last decade, save for the introduction of his current guillotine finish, but the same cannot be said for his time in developmental. If you go back to NXT, you can find Roman's old finish, the Moment of Silence, which is essentially a side suplex that Roman still uses in his matches as a transitional move, but if you go back even further, you can find his FCW finisher, checkmate. This one doesn't get used anymore, and for good reason. The move would see Roman's opponent stand in the center of the ring, while Roman put a headlock on, run in a circle, and basically hit a standing bulldog. Acknowledge your tribal bulldog. Look at him go. Whoop, 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 whoop. Number 4, John Cena, the Protobomb. You know how pissed off everyone gets when NXT call-ups have everything changed about them? Well, imagine Jim Cornette's reaction when all of the OVW call-ups started being given new gimmicks and new finishers. Like this guy, a little-known prospect known as the Prototype. He debuted on SmackDown in 2002 under his real name, John Cena, but didn't develop a new finisher for almost a year until he unveiled the FU as a way to further his feud with Brock Lesnar. In OVW, however, Cena used the Protobomb, a side suplex with some alterations. He would use the move from time to time on SmackDown as well, and would eventually incorporate a stripped-down version of the move into his 5 moves of doom routine. I didn't check to see if he ever amounted to much in wrestling, or Hollywood. Probably not both, though. Number 3, Randy Orton, the Dropkick, and the Overdrive. Has anyone ever used the Overdrive and made it look good? It's one of those really convoluted wrestling finishers that looks so contrived that it immediately snaps you out of what you're watching. Randy Orton couldn't pull it off early in his career, MVP couldn't pull off the Playmaker later on. This move is just better left on the scrap heap. However, Orton doesn't get out of this list with only one forgettable finisher though, as when he arrived on SmackDown in 2002, he used a simple dropkick as a finish. Man, I can't believe that very unique and totally distinct Randy Orton move didn't get over. Maybe significantly more people use dropkicks today, but it feels very strange to think that anyone would ever be sitting in a production meeting in WWE and say, you know what'll really get that kid over? A dropkick. They'll see how athletic he is. Ha ha ha, they'll love it, pal. It's such good sh**. Who would say such words? I can't think of anyone. Thankfully, Orton managed to steal Triple H's old finisher and make it one of the best finishers of all time, so all's well that ends well. Number 2, Kenny Omega, the Golden Shower. I might be taking the piss here, I might not, but I simply don't think anyone should be allowed to forget that Kenny Omega would use a finisher called the Golden Shower. Kenny has a wonderful finisher these days, the One-Winged Angel, which he's been using for the last decade, but maybe this is Pokemon, and maybe that move ran out of PP when he was teaming with Kota Ibushi. The Golden Lovers had a few memorable finishers, but this one saw both men hit stereo 450 splashes out of the same corner. If you're waiting to get hit with the Golden Shower, well, you're in trouble. The Golden Lovers had a brief reunion in 2018, having classic matches regularly, and when they ascended to the top rope, you had better not be taking a piss break because, okay, I can't do this anymore. How the f*** do you name your finisher the Golden Shower? And number 1, Chris Jericho, the Breakdown, aka the Skull Crushing Finale. Chris Jericho is a master of reinvention, whether it be his character or his gear, or in this case, his finishers. He's used a number of finishers throughout his career, ranging from the Lion Salt to the Walls of Jericho to the Codebreaker to the Judas Effect, all of which have brought him good amounts of success. One finisher that cannot make that list, however, is his oft-forgotten 2001 finisher, the Skull Crushing Finale. Yep. As if The Miz didn't steal enough from Jericho at this point with the Miz 5 Cena 0 stuff, The Miz must have been looking back through old Chris Jericho tapes because there he is, clear as day, hitting the skull-crushing finale to beat The Rock for the WCW Championship in 2001. Jericho called it the Breakdown and retired the move fairly quickly, but we can always say that Chris Jericho and The Miz both won WWE World Championships with the exact same move. Maybe Jericho saw the future and knew he had to put as much space between him and this move as possible. And that's our list. If you have any other finishers that we didn't mention on this list that you think are just too wacky for people to forget, well, drop us a comment, let us know, and in the meantime, make sure to give this video a like, share it around with your friends if you liked it, and remember to subscribe and ring that bell. It really does help us a lot. We want to hit 200,000 subscribers by WrestleMania, and only you can make that happen. So give us a subscribe, and remember that LIW is fine.